This is internationally best-selling indie author Michael Brent Collings inviting you to join me at bestsellerlife.com/DCR to unlock my tips, tricks, and hacks for a successful writing career. So go to bestsellerlife.com/DCR and kickstart your writing adventure today.
This is Daniel.
And this is Krebs.
This is Alton.
And I am Matai.
And you're listening to Dungeon Crawlers Radio, the greatest geek podcast out there. All right, everyone, welcome to another episode of Dungeon Crawlers Radio. We're here to entertain you, have fun, and talk about some great, wonderful movie stuff. That's right. For those of you, even though it's not Halloween, there are still times you can watch movies such as Frankenstein, Dracula, The Werewolf, everything. It just because it's not Halloween doesn't mean you can't watch these movies.
Don't forget the 80s classic Monster Squad.
Oh, yes. Monster Squad.
Don't watch that. Side note, I had no concept when I was a kid of how foul-mouthed those little punks are.
Yeah.
Absolutely vulgar children, but just classic 80s.
Just go back and watch Little Monsters, with Howie Mandel and Fred Savage. That was almost
good.
as bad. It's still funny.
It's funny, but they definitely, the language was weird, but Little Monsters has a special place in my heart.
Yeah, I rewatched Goonies with my kids, and my kids were like, they just swore. And I'm like, holy crap, they actually swear quite a bit in this movie.
Yeah, it was the 80s. We didn't wear helmets.
No. When you were riding your bike and jumping off the ramp, you didn't have knee pads, you didn't have elbow pads, you definitely didn't have a helmet, and if you crashed and burned, you got up, rinsed it off with the hose, and went on. It was
either you either had skills or you had scabs, but yeah.
And after you washed yourself off, you took a drink from the hose.
Yeah, because it was fine. It was fine. There were no chemtrails in our hoses or whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, not an 80s episode.
And we survived.
We did.
We're
still
somehow. Around. So.
We did it. We did it.
Yeah, I always laugh when I see people freaking out. Don't let your kid drink from the hose. I'm like, I did a lot, and I'm still around.
1,000,000% letting my kids drink from the hose. It's probably just going to taste gross.
Yeah. Now, I get it if you have secondary water. That might be a little bit different. But anyways, I digress. So, we're going to talk about the Netflix show that was just released called Frankenstein. Which it was directed by, if you want to jump in, you can go ahead.
Yes, this one was directed by Guillermo del Toro, who is someone I have tons of respect for. Absolutely fantastic filmmaker and storyteller. I have enjoyed many of his IPs, and of course, name drop incoming. He has done tons of work with my close personal friend, Doug Jones, and I absolutely adore Guillermo's vision, his visual storytelling style, and he is one of the few filmmakers out there who has a true appreciation for the art and the depth of meaning of horror when so many others are schlock creators. Guillermo does not typically indulge in the gore porn side of things. He's not a frivolous jump scare person. He is about meaning and storytelling, and he has now taken a swing at Mary Shelley's classic Frankenstein.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but he also did Pacific Rim, correct? No?
I think he did. Let me verify that one. I'll verify that, but I think you're right about that.
Yeah.
Which is funny because that's like out of his genre pocket, right? But still,
but it was still visually stunning.
Oh, his visual storytelling's unparalleled.
That's kind of what he's Pan's Labyrinth is amazing, and this movie itself has a great cast. We have Oscar Isaac.
I love Oscar Isaac
as Frankenstein. So and this
as Victor Frankenstein.
Yeah, let me correct a lot of people. A lot of people, when you say Frankenstein, they relate it to the monster. Think that the monster is Frankenstein. No, it's actually Victor Frankenstein that we're focused on. it's his creation, the monster, that invokes the fear that is the cobbled creation of other humans that have been dug up from grave robbing, which was definitely frowned upon back then, and then put together. And I know a lot of people. I talk to people and stuff like that, and like, oh yeah, Frankenstein. He's got the bolts on his neck and the flat head. And I'm like, no, that's the monster. Nope. So this definitely focuses on the book and Victor Frankenstein's. I'll just put in Victor there. His journey into creating his monster and so forth. Mm-hmm. We also have Jacob Elordi.
Yeah.
Elordi.
Elordi.
Excuse me. Yeah, those. There's some names that are just weird.
Some names are weird.
Yeah, and then Mia Goth. There's a lot more other people, and it looks like Lars Mikkelsen's in there as well.
Christoph Waltz.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
David
Charles Dance is in there. David Bradley. I mean, the cast on this is phenomenal. The cast on this is an esoteric cast that you would not have predicted. If usually when someone is asked, "Oh, who would you cast to tell this story?" This is a string of actors, most of whom would probably not make the list, or at least not make the roles that they're currently in. Mm-hmm. And what an incredibly strong cast they've assembled for this. By the way, side note, yes, Guillermo del Toro did direct Pacific Rim, but not its sequel.
Which is surprising. Well, excuse me. Which is not surprising.
Not surprising.
The sequel really was missing a lot.
Yeah. Loved John Boyega. The sequel was a wonky movie.
Yeah, and it just felt like it was missing something. Now I understand what it was missing. It was missing him.
It was missing Guillermo. And by the way, thank you very much for clarifying the difference, because I agree with you. So, fun fact, I only just read the book for the first time last year. And I was going through this moment where I really wanted to dive into some of the classics. I had read portions of The Great Gatsby, but had never actually read the full story. And so I read through The Great Gatsby, and I got a really nice legacy copy of Frankenstein from, it was like a Barnes and Noble. They do really pretty special hardbound ones, So I got one of those, and I read it all the way through and absolutely adored the experience. Some of it was by our modern standards a tad loquacious. It was a tad verbose at times, but what a gorgeous, well-written Gothic tale. And I love that. And also, just for the record, if you go to IMDb and you look up Netflix's Frankenstein, everyone is properly named, including Oscar Isaac as Victor Frankenstein and Jacob Elordi as the creature.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they slightly changed it from the monster to the creature.
I think the creature is the nominal name, and in modern parlance, we call him the monster.
Okay, gotcha. I mean, the thing, you kind of mentioned it right there. This book came out in 1818. It's over 200 years old.
Yeah.
That's impressive that it's still very popular and very much at the front of mainstream, culture.
Yes.
Mary Shelley wrote this when she was 19. That's kind of a big deal. I mean, most authors, it's later in their life that they get it published and get some notoriety. And if I'm incorrect, I apologize for anyone out there that's more of a thespian and but if you would have known so and so was this. I'm thinking of Christopher Paolini. His first book was at 17. It takes a bit, especially back then too, to get published. I mean, it's not as easy as I can email my manuscript off. They have to really send it off.
And I could be mistaken. I think she may have had to publish under a pseudonym originally, but
I think so, because women,
but I'd have to verify.
Back in the 1800s.
Yeah. Could we say that with sarcastic derision though, and just be like, because women back in the no, not just joking. I'm just teasing.
No, the thing is that's the thing that's amazing, okay, is back then, at that time frame, that she was able to write this masterpiece that has survived 200 years is amazing, in my opinion.
No, absolutely.
And kind of going a little bit back to what you were saying, for the last couple years, I've actually dove back into those kind of older, what you would deem horror stories. 2 years ago, we went into this literary experience my kids and I did, and they did a retelling of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And at the very end, I got a leather-bound copy of that, and a couple other stories that were with that. And then this year, they did Dracula. I'm really hoping they do Frankenstein next year, because it's like, not only do I get a really cool book out of this, but have them, like, they have professional actors standing there retelling the story. And, it doesn't go into super depth because, they only got so much time. Because you're walking along this river trail, but it's enough that even my kids are like, wow, I'm interested in this. Can we learn more? And it's like, yes, please. Because these older ones are not about gore. They're not about the, like the Saw or the Ring, where it's just like, come on, I'm just tired of this stuff. It gets into your head. It makes you question things. And that's, I think, what the original premise of Frankenstein, at least in my mind, is okay, should we play God? And when we do play God, does it come out right? And then what should we do about our creation that doesn't, meet conventional, societal norms? Now, that's where I think the Netflix movie kind of pivots a little too much. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But before we hit that, as far as the gothic visuals, I think Guillermo hits it in this movie.
Yes.
It definitely looks like the 1800s. The clothing, the grittiness, just the aesthetics. I feel like I'm transported back into time to that.
Yeah.
And I don't have to suspend disbelief. I am just feeling like I am living in that time frame.
Absolutely.
And it was wonderful.
I felt the very same way. In fact, actually, just right out of the gate, one of the very first things I said to my wife as we were watching was that the art direction was just bar none profound. Like, it was just absolutely insanely well crafted, drew me in immediately. And that's very typical Guillermo. Guillermo, again, his passion for storytelling visually translates, and he is such an artist when it comes to creating that transportive world. And obviously there were elements in this that were less than 19th century honest. Some of it definitely had a contemporary feel in terms of its execution, but like one of my favorite examples of this is the way that they designed the caskets for Victor's parents, and I realize all of that is likely based on certain very real practices. However, obviously this was a modern artistic take on how those caskets worked and how they, but the color, the lighting, the cinematography, all of it came together to create this incredibly compelling visual spectacle. And so the visuals on this film are exceptional. I would absolutely hope that this film gets considered for best art direction in a future award ceremony of some type. So visually, film is absolutely top notch.
Yeah, and he also, I think he kind of went along with Shelley's original, the way she did the novel, because it opens up. There's 3 sections how he does the movie.
Yes.
Which is the prelude. It opens up kind of from the perspective of the ship captain, which I think, if memory serves me, is the same way in the book. And then the other two chapters or sections of the book is Victor's Tale and the Creature's Tale.
Yes.
And so, again, I think, and we've talked about this a lot in the past, like if you're going to do something, stick to the source material.
Show reverence to the source material, right?
Yes, excuse me, show reverence to the source material. And I think he does that quite well. He made some creative differences, which those are okay. We're okay with that. We've talked about that many times, where we're okay with creative differences as long as we're showing that reverence to the source material. But then, we get to the point of the creature.
Yeah.
And this is a point where I have some contention with the movie. For the most part, I would say this was a decent movie. It was a really enjoyable movie, but I feel like there's components of the story that get lost with the creative choices they made with the creature. Yeah,
I agree.
So, where normally, in past material, in the book, he's described as a grotesque creature that no one can lay. I'm probably going to botch this, but no one can lay eyes upon him. It is a monstrosity in defiance of the vision of God, or something like that.
Yeah,
and like the only person that can stand to be around the creature is a blind man. But in the movie, this creature isn't that. It's more visually appealing, kind of reminiscent to the weird creatures we saw in Alien. Oh my gosh, what was the one?
Alien
Prometheus. Yeah, the Prometheus Alien movie, where they're kind of these large white creatures that look more beautiful, sculpted. To me, it was like, how is this cobbled from dead bodies? It looks too clean and smooth. Yes, I see the lines where that could possibly have been a part inserted, but it wasn't a grotesque creature. And so there's a lot of things that I don't think paid off well. Like, why would they want to destroy it when it looked very sleek and angelic?
Yeah.
How would that help pay off, when the blind man shows up and the blind man's okay around the creature? So those components didn't really pay off for me. I get what he was trying to do. And your friend John Soares kind of spoke to that, and I don't want to take away from his words. So,
friend and filmmaker John Soares actually posted a really great comment about this. I often enjoy his takes, the way that he explains his his perspective.
Yeah,
he and I often disagree on movies, but we also agree on a lot of stuff as well. It kind of goes back and forth. But he made a post on the Facey Space about. By the way, that's my way of saying Facebook for those who didn't catch on to that. But the Facey Space, he wrote about this, and actually this one statement I thought was very, very smart. So for context, for those who have not seen the movie yet, I guess there's a moment there where I thought maybe we should talk about spoilers, but no, we're talking about a book that's over 200 years old. We're fine. John made this comment, and he said, he was talking about how the monster's supposed to be hideous, that no one can like you were saying, only the only person who isn't terrified in the book is the blind.
Yeah.
And he said what we have instead is basically a print model, referring to actor Elordi, right, Jacob Elordi, with some fake scars that is supposed to falsely, this is my favorite part, it's supposed to falsely induce us into feeling like we are being compassionate, that we are special because we see the beauty within the monstrous. I have never thought of it that way before, but he absolutely nailed it. And this happens in Hollywood all the time because, for example, Tim Burton's entire visual philosophy is that beautiful things are ugly and ugly things are beautiful, right? And so when you, with that in the back of your mind, watch Edward Scissorhands or watch The Nightmare Before Christmas or Dark Shadows, or everything Tim Burton is about finding the beauty in the terrifying or the ugly, and finding ugliness in that which we think is beautiful, right? And go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, like Dark Shadows, you got Johnny Depp playing Barnabas. He's a vampire. You know, he's supposed to be the monster and hideous. And then you have Ava Green, you know, and since she showed up in, you know, James Bond, everyone
Ava
thought
Green
she was
is
stunning.
drop dead gorgeous. Like, yeah.
But she is the nasty, villainous witch that has no heart, that is like destroying Barnabas's family because he decided to love someone else. And it's just like, ugh. Like, you're right. That's exactly what he does.
I think the 90s reshaped our view of vampires. Actually, maybe even as early as the 80s with Lost Boys. But we have migrated. Part of it is that the mystique of the vampire is that it's supposed to be this seductive monster. It's supposed to be hypnotic, you know, that kind of thing to draw you in. It's supposed to be a trap, right? And then in the 90s, you had the whole Vampire Masquerade phase, and you had Interview with the Vampire, and you had there was a vampire. There was a sexy vampire explosion in the 90s, much like the zombie explosion of the last 15, 20 years, right? And
then we went into, you know, Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Buffy the Vampire Slayer, David Boreanaz, and...
Yeah, where they were very compelling, but then they sloughed into this more like Nosferatu type hideous vampire mode.
There was a Canadian TV show that I still love in my heart called Forever Night, Knight.
Oh, I love that one.
I love Forever Night. I have that one on DVD. And same thing, right? Vampires are sexy. Vampires. It is, for me, Forever Night is the epitome of 90s vampire. Vampire voyeurism, right?
And wasn't he like
he was a homicide cop.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he was a homicide cop.
Homicide detective, yeah. So anyway, not to get too far off the beaten path, the point of this tirade is that Hollywood, you know, it's always sex and violence, right? Hollywood is always sex and violence if you're going to make a lot of money. And that thread feeds into everything. If they can make something beautiful, they can attract an audience. And so I see what John is saying about the monster. Now, on the one hand, when I first saw the trailer for this and I heard who the actor was, because I know the actor is talented, my first impression of the trailer itself is phenomenal. The trailer is exceptionally well done, because it seeks to do justice to the book in a way that no previous film iteration has. There was in the 90s Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, starring, if I'm not mistaken, Kenneth Branagh and Robert De Niro.
Yeah, and it was kind of riding on the coattails of Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Yes,
that they did in that time.
Yes, and Kenneth Branagh was an up-and-coming, you know, film director as well as actor, and blah blah blah. But you're absolutely right. They were trying to do something, you know, Bram Stoker's Dracula with Gary Oldman and Keanu Reeves and
very young
Anthony
Keanu
Hopkins
Reeves.
And so I think I kind of fell into a common trap. One common trap with this is that every time you remake some film with a cultural icon, in this case Frankenstein's monster, right? There's this sort of unspoken requirement, this need, this drive to take something that's iconic and revitalize its iconography, right? We see this in superhero movies all the time, where every movie, they have to have a new uniform. Every single one. Like, you can't just stick with what worked last time. There has to be an evolution, and it's almost a demand at this point. So like all the Iron Man, I mean, that kind of makes sense because the suit evolves. It's the Tony Stark evolution.
Effect.
But this happens with Spider-Man too. Like even Tom Holland's Spider-Man, and it's gotten to the point where, in my opinion, the suit changes are unnecessary. It's like you had the Iron Spider. You had Iron Spider. Why did you switch over to this spandex with black outlining, right? And I think they did the same thing with the creature in this one. They're constantly revamping it, constantly restyling it. By the way, even though it's wildly unfaithful to the book, Boris Karloff's Frankenstein is iconic for a reason, right?
Oh yeah.
They made a truly grotesque creature in its day, and that's why it still hangs on to this day as the icon of Frankenstein's monster. Jacob Elordi's, I think, does a great job of expressing Victor's fascination with anatomy and musculature and the idea that you can combine disparate sources together. I think it does a good job there, but you and John are right, and most of the internet is right on this one, where it's like you still have a beautiful creature. And it really is this illusion of like, oh, we are special as an audience because we are feeling compassionate. Guys, Jacob Elordi's gorgeous. Like, there's not... I'm straight as an arrow. Jacob Elordi is gorgeous, right? Like, and so I see what John is saying. And was I repulsed by the creature? No, I was repulsed by actions, right? And the monster for me was not off-putting by any measure.
So, and here's the thing: is modern day technology, could we probably do this and make the creature look like the creature appeared in this movie? Probably. We have a lot of technology that would allow us to do that. I mean, but back then, and this is the thing that really was off-putting, besides, you know, the creature being stunning, we'll leave it at that, is the technology at that time could not create those smooth of lines. You know, that was the thing that was interesting about the creature. I mean, even Herman Munster, you know, that is technically supposed to be the creature. He's got the stitches. He's got a flat head. He's got the bolts. He's awkward. He's gangly. Yes, that's more of a comedic version of it, but even then, he's not stunning and beautiful. That is the one thing that was also a little off-putting to me, because the technology at the time would not have allowed that when you're cobbling from other body parts together, because they're not going to match. They're not going to move seamlessly. Every human being is different. And so that was something that was just like, what, this just doesn't fit. It doesn't work.
I'm going to say something that might be a little controversial, because
go ahead.
It's going to reference real life people who have gone through some very tragic situations, and I don't mean by any means to disparage them in the least. We have excellent source material, reference material for individuals who have gone through horrific physical mutilation events, particularly with their faces, and then have gone through not just reconstructive surgery, but have gone through like transplants. They've gone through facial transplants from cadaver to living tissue again. And what's interesting is that, like, on the one hand, this gives them a chance at life again in a society that is highly judgmental, and it gives them a new lease on life, and for that I celebrate it. I think, objectively speaking, in many cases, we could also look at these and say that there's an uncanny valley effect, where if you were to encounter these individuals, the back of your mind would be thinking something is wrong, something is out of place, and it's not their fault. And I'm not disparaging these people. They've gone through something horrendous and horrific. But wouldn't it be interesting in an attempt at Mary Shelley's Frankenstein to attempt a prosthetic approach that gives us that uncanny valley feeling of like, something's out of place, something's not quite right, I can't quite put my finger on it, but this is not natural, this is not organic. And that's the weird thing to say, right? Because these victims who have received life-saving or social life-saving facial transplants, they've had a new lease on life. Like I said earlier, it is organic. They're using real facial tissue, and it's natural in the sense that it comes from a human body. But this was not the face with which they were born. This is the face that they were given after some horrible incident, right? I wonder if we could structure the creature in such a way that we invoke that feeling of the uncanny valley. The uncanny valley is a feeling that we all have naturally when we encounter something that is trying to pose as a regular everyday human, and there is something completely unnatural about it. And I think the monster should be more like that. And that's based on modern sentiment, because the modern audience is not, the things that Mary Shelley wrote about that was supposed to be horrific were horrific in her day because they'd never been approached. But by our standards, post Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Saw, and even real life horrors of like school shootings and terrorist attacks, we are a highly calloused, desensitized audience. So how do we now invoke discomfiture? And to me, I think maybe we have to stop looking at horror as gore and viscera, and we need to start looking at horror from the lens of like, how do we trigger that feeling of this is not natural, this is not safe?
Well, I mean, that's why Hitchcock was so popular and amazing, is because it's psychological horror.
Yes.
It you don't have to, Psycho. You know that woman is being killed. You see the knife come down a couple times. She's screaming. You hear the sound, and then you see the blood draining down. Going down the drain.
Yeah.
You don't have to see her getting stabbed multiple times.
Every ounce of action,
blood.
right? Yeah.
Like we see in horror now. I do agree with you. I think if they would have gone the route of the putting more of that uncanny valley in the creature, it's where your brain is like, okay, there's something wrong here, but I don't get it. It's off. I had that feeling, but it wasn't the way it should have been. It was like, wow, something doesn't fit here. And then after I finished the movie, I'm like, the creature was too beautiful. The creature wasn't grotesque. That's the problem. But if they had made some changes where the creature was, wasn't the status quo, didn't look right, very human-like.
Yeah.
Maybe there were some things that were different. That would have set better with me and my brain, because there's still something off here. But, this creature's not going to fit into society. I think that would have been much better. Where, okay, Creature Commandos. I'm going to use that. DC had put out an amazing animated series called Creature Commandos, and the Bride of Frankenstein is in that, and she is, from all aspects, stunning. I'll give him that one.
Yeah.
But she still has stitches in her face. She still has stitches along her body, and the skin is different colors. If they would have gone that route, even, I would have been okay with that, instead of it being one solid uniform color. It shows, okay, this is a creature that is cobbled from different body parts. And you're right. Back then, grave robbing was it happened a lot, and it was against the law. People were getting jewelry and stuff.
I mean,
like
for the
that.
record, folks, it's against the law today too.
It is. But it was more commonly done then.
And there was a huge social stigma behind being a grave robber.
Yeah, very much so, because you're disturbing the rest of the dead, and and curses and stuff like that.
It's violatory.
And for Victor to go do this and then create a creature from the parts he stole, it's like ultimate blasphemy in their eyes. And so, very well done. But I think if even that small aesthetic of different colored skin, the actual suture marks, it still could have been a stunning man dressed up as this character, and I would have been, okay, I can deal with that. But there wasn't even that. It just seemed like there was a lot of fine lines, and it looked more like a sculpture of David, than it was the creature.
Well, and on top of that, to your point, he's supposed to be cobbled together from multiple sources, and the difficult part here is that to John's earlier point, it's a print model with fake scars. It shouldn't just be scars. It should be difference in muscle tone and length and size. It should be difference in elevation of skin. It should be difference not just in you brought up skin tone. That's part of it. It should also be difference in pore size. It should be difference. It should look like a patchwork human. And I will say, the very, very beginning of the film, when we're doing the prelude segment, the creature as it first appears, we will discover by the end of the film we're looking at the creature post battle damage, if you will. But that version of the creature, I think, was more off-putting than what we saw for the bulk of the film.
Yeah.
Now, given that I can hear myself getting long-winded, but
We're almost out of time.
but let's start putting some finer points on this. So I think you and I might be of the same mind where the visuals are concerned. Visually, gorgeous film. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think it's, I would say A- in the visual realm. Very stunning. Few minor things that, I don't exactly agree on, but for the most part, wow, really well done.
Yeah, I would give it a solid A. I'm wondering if I would give it an A+. I give it a solid A. The play with color at times does get a bit ham-fisted. There's actually a line in the film where the creature confronting Victor, the creature says, I'm not the monster, you're the monster, Victor, which is the message of the book.
Yes.
And it's not like that was an absolutely beat you over the face with it moment, and we didn't need that. That should have been the implied message. But in terms of its visuals, I brought that up because some of the visuals were a little bit ham-fisted also in terms of its play with color, the absolute crimson on white and things like that, right?
And that's why I gave the A-.
I can see the A-. I'm still going to give it a solid A because
fine.
I was drawn in by the visual storytelling from the absolute jump.
Yeah.
And it stuck with me the whole time. So visuals, great. What did you think of audio design?
Again, I think we're still in the A range, with audio. I've always loved the visual and the audio that Guillermo brings
It's all good.
to a movie because he is an amazing storyteller.
Yes.
He knows the things that invoke passion in us. I mean, the fact that we're talking about this right now, that he's invoking that. And honestly, in my opinion, a good horror story or a good movie draws on that music. Pacific Rim, I love that guitar riff. I love that theme song. It just fits perfect with those giant mechs. Pan's Labyrinth, he does the same thing with the music. And this is something that Hitchcock was famous for, is you put in that music at the right moment. You don't need to show, you just need to invoke that passion, that fear, those emotions, and you don't have to show it. Their imagination will fill in the blanks. And so I think he does that very wonderfully. Old horror movies, they used to do the same thing.
Yes.
And so I think audio-wise, he does a great job of that. And so I would have to say an A.
Yeah, sound direction for me, also an A. I'm trying to think if there was like any standout special moments. There is they have this recreation of a 19th century anatomy model of a pregnant woman. It's all sculpted in ivory, and it's almost like a puzzle box where you can pull it apart so you can see the different anatomical aspects, including the infant inside, and just the little touches of audio where you can hear the pieces going back into place subtly in the background while they're having a conversation. Just little things like that matter to me as someone who takes that as a silo of the art seriously. I think that is they did a great job. You're right. Yeah. Soundtrack's excellent. The Foley art is excellent. I'm with you. It's an A. Let's get to the most important. Let's go actors and then story. So then actors in terms of like performance, casting choices, all of that. How did you feel about the actors?
Yeah, I think the actors did a great job. I mean, even the creature, as much as, we've been ragging on him, the actor did a fantastic job. I think everyone delivered a wonderful performance. In the beginning, I was like, Oscar Isaacs is Victor? I don't know, because I just see Poe Dameron every time I see his face. Even in Moon Knight, that's all I saw. He's got some acting chops. Don't get me wrong.
Oh, he's an amazing actor.
He did fantastic in Moon Knight.
Deus Ex Machina, yeah, or Ex Machina. That's what it was.
The second I saw him walk in as Victor, and he speaks, I'm like, all right, I'm on board. I think everyone did a fantastic job in filming this. And again, actors are going off of the direction of the director.
Yeah.
And so I think, again, because of who is at the helm, everything pulled off well as far as actors. And story, I think that this is probably one of the closest and most truest versions of the book I've seen, with the exception of how the creature looks. So I think acting-wise, it's an A. Story-wise, I'm going to give it an A-. The creature part still drags me down, but otherwise, I think it's one of the closest, truest versions of this book we've seen.
Yeah, actor-wise, everyone's performance was top-notch. You had a bunch of you had some actors in there who got hardly any screen time at all.
Yeah.
But with what they were given, they did exceptional work. I absolutely loved, like, Jacob Elordi. His timing of delivery was excellent, and there were moments where he had to be this ferocious, unbelievably strong creature fighting other living things, and I think that they portrayed that extremely well. Mm-hmm. Even though and now we're going to get into the story part. For me, the acting, absolute solid A. In some cases, in some moments, A+. By the way, favorite moment of the movie was the broken nose moment. Once you see the movie, you'll understand. That one I will not spoil. That small 5-second moment is my favorite moment of the whole film. But anyway, then we get to story. And for me, this is a B-.
Okay.
Now, the reason I give it a B- is, again, having just read the book last year, much of the story is still fresh in my mind. There are details I've lost, but much of it is still fresh in my mind. The ages of the characters are completely off. Some of the relationships are completely incorrect. They started exploring with certain relationships they shouldn't have. They created this compassionate, almost somewhere between respectful and romantic relationship between Elizabeth and the creature that, to my recollection, does not exist in the book.
No, it does not. I forgot about that completely. Yeah, it doesn't exist.
They cut certain characters out, killed certain characters early. So while it is more faithful to the original story comparatively than likely any other iteration, and again, I've got to go back and revisit the Kenneth Branagh, Robert De Niro, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein film. But in terms of popular iconography, it's more accurate to those films. It's still, there were so many moments in the story where I'm just like, this doesn't do this aspect justice. This is not where Victor really was. This is not what was really going on, and that pulled me out of the experience a lot.
Now that you're talking about that, yeah, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. You're right. Again, the creature's grotesque. He didn't. There's no relationships that should be forming or bonding.
Yeah.
And I think they were trying to recreate, the Boris Karloff,
Boris Karloff,
film where he's with the little girl, but with an adult woman, and that doesn't work. So
yeah,
I'm not going to go as far as a B-. I'll go to a B+. Pull it out of the A range because I forgot about some of those smaller those other components that you're referencing, because you're right, there are a lot of things that they added and changed that didn't quite fit. Again, I still think it's the closest we've got.
I do agree with that,
but there are some things that didn't sit well as far as some of those relationships that they chose to add in or manipulate. So
in the end, I think it is still a must watch once.
Oh yeah.
If you love it, watch it again and again. For me, I've watched it once. I don't know when I'll ever get back to watching it again, but I would not take watching it again off the table.
And that's this is kind of the thing I've noticed with Netflix films. They're great for a single watch. They're not always. They don't pull on enough to go, hey, I want to watch this again. which is really sad. And I don't know if that's on purpose to design because, well, they don't sell the DVDs. That's the other thing that's, or Blu-rays. That's the other thing that's really frustrating with these new straight streaming movies is if you love it and want it, you can't get it. You can't go out and buy it, which is frustrating. But, maybe our listeners will enjoy this. Maybe, they are a diehard Mary Shelley fan and they love this film and they love the creative choices that have been made, and that's okay. That's fantastic for you. Overall, I would say this is a good movie to watch. There are some creative choices that were made that, the two of us don't agree on. There's some that we do agree on. But for the most part, it is worth watching, especially if you are a type of fan of this. If you don't like horror, this is one of those horror films you can still watch and not feel like, oh my gosh, I'm just bombarded with gore and nudity and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
It was done well. This is more like the classic horror films. But overall, again, fantastic movie, done really well. There's some creative choices we disagree on, but you should give it a try. So, with that said, I'm going to say we're out of here.
And Dungeon Crawlers, tell your story, or Mary Shelley's, whatever it may be. And always remember to be epic! And don't suck.
Thank you for listening to the podcast. If you like this episode, please give us a 5-star rating on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you find us.
Remember, the Force will be with you, always.
What happens when modern magic, high-tech weaponry, and an unstoppable dragon collide? Find out in the epic audiobook of A Dragon's Fate, brought to life by Daniel and Krebs. This Whitney Award finalist novel will pull you into a pulse-pounding world where a secret cabal battles for power and a dragon could bring everything to an explosive end. Don't just hear the story. Feel the magic, the danger, and the action. Get ready for a ride you won't forget. Grab your copy of A Dragon's Fate, now available on Audible.